Okay, so hello and welcome to today's class. So today we'll be talking about the terms and definitions of pattern making and everything about pattern making. So let's just get right into it. So the very first thing that we want to talk about is pattern drafting. So what exactly is pattern drafting? So it's a design process that involves you taking measurements from a person's body or a dress form. So there are two ways to creating to take your measurements. Either you use a dress form or you take it on the person's body and then you use the measurements that you've taken, you add ease and then you transfer it on the pattern paper. So I always say that the human body is a 3D template. It's a 3D figure, and the pattern paper is your 2D shape. So you're trying to create a replica of what you have on the person's body onto the paper. So this is exactly what pattern drafting is. So once you create your template on paper, is that template or the also called the pattern paper or the paper pattern that is now placed on the fabric and used as a guide to cut out. So that's exactly what pattern drafting is, creating a replica of what you have on the body on paper. So let's move to the next thing. The next thing I want to talk about is pattern draping. So there are two ways to actually making clothes. Is either you drape it on the stand or you draft it on a paper. Now, the dress form that you use in draping is a standard dress form. There are different kinds of dress form, sorry, excuse me. So there's one that you increase the waist, the hip, and the bust, differently, while the other one is joined. And they're very standardized dress forms, but they're expensive. So it depends on what you want to use. So you take fabric and then you place it on the dress form and you create the design that you want. So you can use it to create the basic pattern. So our basic patterns are the skirts, front and back skirts, front and back bodice, and then the sleeve block. So we have five basic patterns: your front, bodice, your skirt, and your sleeve. Now the reason why trousers and the others are not there is because with your bodice block you can create a dress. So a dress pattern is not part of the five, so those five and then also with your skirt pattern you can create a trouser. Yeah, there's a way you do it. So the book says that, or most textbooks say that there are five basic patterns, so you can create that on the dress form. So that's what draping is. It involves you pinning and marking pieces of fabric that have been placed on the body form or the human being into a desired style. So once you create it on the dress form, it's with fabric that you use fabrics to create um some sort of templates, and then you now put it on paper. You remove the fabric and put it on paper, cut it out, and use that paper pattern to cut your fabric or your dress. So let's move to the next thing. The next thing is called flat pattern making. So what exactly is flat pattern making? Now this is the best way to explain it. It involves you using what you've created. I said that the basic patterns are the front and the back skirts, front and back bodice and sleeve. So for example, they are called the basic patterns. So flat pattern making means that you use the basic patterns to create a new style. So you use your sleeve to create a bishop sleeve. You use your sleeve to create a flared sleeve. That's pattern making, using what the sloper to create a new design. So I said, for example, you use a skirt pattern to create a pencil skirt or gore, or use a bodice block and sleeve, because use a bodice block and sleeve that you can use to create a kimono or a raglan. So that's pattern making, flat pattern making. Now what is pattern making? Pattern making is now step one and step two. So it involves the whole process from drafting, draping to flat pattern cutting. So it's a whole process. So you see that in the textbooks, they sum everything up together and just say, oh, pattern making, pattern making. So it's the whole technique. Now, let's move to grain lines. What are grain lines? Now, grain lines on the fabric, especially on woven fabric. Now, if you have ever seen anybody weave clothes before, you will see, even with crocheting, you see that they first of all start with long vertical threads. Those long vertical threads are the initial, the basics of or the basic the basic foundation of any fabric. Now they are usually strong, they are usually stable, because if you cut, you can't even do anything other than redo those horizontal vertical threads. Sorry, so those vertical threads are called wrap, right? The vertical threads are called the WAP, right? And then you see that they now introduce like some sort of device that pushes some threads into the loom and gives you so before all you saw was vertical threads, right? So you now start to see horizontal thread, and so they kind of push this, like this device, up and down to give you that vertical. So the vertical threads are called weft. Now, this now means that there are two directions, the vertical and the horizontal. The vertical is now called the straight grain, while the horizontal lines or the horizontal thread is called the crosswise. So these are now the two directions that you have. Now, when you buy fabrics, either lace or whatever, even lining, you see that they measure along. So they measure along the crosswise. Yeah, from so that direction from 1 yard to two is along the crosswise. But if you fold it, so this is it. That direction, sorry, that the first direction. Okay, so as I was saying, that direction where you measure along your the yardage is the crosswise. So most times you fold, you cut your clothes along that direction, but it's not supposed to be. So you're supposed to fold, you know, um, you put one self edge on another and then you cut it. That's how. So that direction is the lengthwise. So let's just continue. You would see that you see more of that in the next slide. So let's move to crosswise. So I just said that, the lengthwise, or after the lengthwise are inserted, lengthwise threads are inserted, then you now start to see the horizontal threads, right? Now fabric cut on this direction is called the crosswise, while on the length, the straight vertical, fabric cut on the vertical direction is called lengthwise or straight grain. Good. Now, selfage. So I was talking about selfage. So what exactly is a selfage? In Yoruba they call it itiaje. It's the very finished, that finely finished um part of your fabric where you usually see the number, the printed, the name of the manufacturing company. You see numbers, you see colors, you even see all these color codes. Yeah. So that's literally the self edge. Is usually the finished, is very very finely finished, and it doesn't fray. Now let's move to bias. What's a bias? So the bias is literally a direction. It's also a direction, but it's angle 45, and it's angle 45 to the crosswise and the lengthwise grain. Now, the thing about the true bias is that once you get the true bias, which is angle 45, you find out that you get the best stretch in this direction. Now they say that, so I said here that fabrics cut on bias, they hug you, they move easily, and they have the most stretch. So how is grain lines important to us? Two things: balance. If you cut on the lengthwise, there's a tendency for that dress to hang well because the thread is very stable. So it makes your fabric hang well, it stays on your body. But if you cut clothes on the crosswise, because it's not stable, it tends to, it doesn't hang well and it twists. Another thing with grain lines is that there are some fabrics that when you buy from the market, it folds unnecessarily, it starts to twist. Those fabrics are called off grain. Most designers shouldn't use clothes like that, except you can adjust it. So there's a way you adjust it. You'll find the lengthwise and then the crosswise. So you just keep pulling till the fabric lays flat and adjust itself. So that's that about balance and fabrics being off grain. Another thing I also want to talk about is stretch. So I'd said that in the previous class that the clothes cut on bias have the most stretch, followed by cross grain, and then the clothes cut on straight grain have the least stretch. So this is all we're going to take on grain lines. So do your research, do your assignments, and thank you very much.